Battlefield 5 has some extremely encouraging changes and additions on the way, in conjunction with some that have already been added to the game. The community that's stuck around with the game this far has a real feel-good factor about it right now. There's optimism and a sense of hype. This is in stark contrast to the apparent feelings of bewilderment, frustration and disappointment which have punctuated much of the first 6 or 7 months of its existence. It's refreshing, and I'm personally very pleased to see it be the case, and I have a tempered sense of excitement for what's to come. But it would be dishonest to portray current events with purely rose-tinted glasses. I do dearly want to focus upon the positives today, as I've been promising for some time, and I intend to do so, but they must be measured against the negatives, as is always the case. I'm not going to create a false narrative and mislead you either way, which means it's also important to mention that, up until the announcement yesterday of the raft of new content on the way, overall feelings were still pretty dark, as we continue to deal with stuttering, lower FPS for many players, a multitude of bugs, and disappointing challenge rewards. And that's essentially a snapshot of what today's video will discuss: the perpetual struggle of good and bad, improvements and new content versus existing bugs and newly introduced ones, and whether this potentially marks the start of an upwards trend where DICE really take hold of this game and pushes it closer to its full potential and a better experience for the players. So what quality of life changes have either recently been added to the game, are coming soon, or will continue to be tweaked? Things that help to take the game to the next level from purely a playing standpoint, or at least help to appease the player base. Well, there's distinct changes to Attrition, the system that this Battlefield title is essentially built around. You have limited ammunition, you have limited health regeneration, and a huge reliance upon medics and supports around you, all running off to find a designated station on the map to stock back up again. Because let's be realistic, picking ammunition up off dead bodies wasn't all that useful, often netting you just a handful more rounds. Well, after a fair amount of pushback regarding this system, DICE appear to have decided to make it less restrictive for each individual. There's the ability to actually take health and ammo directly from support players and medics who have the necessary equipment without them choosing to give it to you. Plus the return of auras, essentially allowing players to heal or restock allies around them with crates. I assume these changes will please many players. Plus there's the additions of manual leaning, so players have more control over when and how to lean, to utilize some surfaces in a different and more creative manner. There's also the vast improvement to the spectator mode crashing instances, and the proposed massive increase to the max rank attainable. The vast majority of regular players have been stuck at around rank 50 for an extreme amount of time, making the ranks essentially meaningless and taking away one factor that encourages continued play. Well, that's being increased to 500, yet from 50 to 500. That's a pretty massive leap, and if they've structured the progression appropriately this time, could be something great for those who want to really grind for something. It'll scratch that itch. So it's been a long time coming, like a really long time coming, but at least it's been changed finally, so that's great. Then we also have the coming edition of the 5v5 experience, something being described as the competitive experience in some circles. It will provide a new feel for the game and another reason for some to play. Is its implementation a little confusing considering the removal of 2 permanent small-scale modes recently? Yeah, a bit, especially as the logical reasons seem to be player-based split, but then maybe that's entirely the point. With 5v5 coming, they want there to be more people to play it so it doesn't die. I get that. I don't agree with the removal of front lines and domination, nor do I agree with their official explanation for it, but at least if it's partially due to the 5v5 mode, then I can understand the logic despite my disagreement. So what about the big stuff? The pretty massive news we got yesterday? Well, we got a trailer and a roadmap for fairly extensive amounts of content on the way. I'll throw that trailer up in the background here if you haven't seen it, and I'll just continue to talk stuff out and then we'll go over what this trailer consists of. So hopefully this coming content will be enough to make up for the content drought that's been experienced since the release of Battlefield 5. There's been a few new guns, which has been a definite plus point, but there's been far too many weeks of near pointless Tides of War challenge rewards and a distinct lack of maps. One new map in 6 months, which became 2 maps in just over 6 months with the recent addition of Mercury, which by the way, despite any issues I may have with it, is absolutely beautiful, genuinely stunning, and a pretty good experience for the most part on breakthrough I feel. A bit of tweaking for that mode and Conquest, and that map could well be great. I'll have my fingers crossed. And I should mention, I believe we're getting the temporary opportunity to play Frontlines on that map this week, possibly by the time you see this, which, although disappointing that Frontlines isn't into permanent mode anymore, I am excited to try it out on Mercury. And we can now add to that map total in a pretty big way with Chapter 4 of the Tides of War. This month we're getting Al Sundan, a vast North African battlefield. This is then followed by Marita in July, which is another battle in Greece, but this time on a mountainside. Then in August we get 2 new maps focused upon close quarters combat in Provence and the Lofoten Islands. Then besides just new maps, there's vehicle, map and weapon updates for Firestorm this month. New weapons, gadgets and vehicles available to unlock throughout the chapter, and this is a quote, constant quality of life improvements. It's kind of funny to me that that's listed on the roadmap with the new content, but regardless, at least it's an indication of the intention to continue to fix the game up. So that sounds like quite a lot of stuff, especially when compared with the other Tides of War. Quite simply, that's down to the maps. The community has been crying out for new maps for such a long time, so a handful of them dropping within a comparatively short space of time is a totally different experience where this game is concerned, and a very welcome experience at that. The trailer itself also shows little glimpses of lots of new weapons, one of which has some players very excited, as there appears to be a moment where an M1 Garand is shown, and the trailer ends with the iconic ping sound of that weapon. So it seems pretty clear that the M1 Garand is on the way at some point, which is something that many players have been asking for. And don't forget that it appears there's going to be the introduction of Japanese soldiers towards the end of the trailer. The Pacific Theatre appears to be coming, which is also something that the community has been asking for. And this is all without mentioning Operation Underground, set to come in Chapter 5. Many an old school player will hear the word Operation and get very excited. If you're not sure why, just do a YouTube search of something like Operation Metro and you'll start to get the idea. In short, these are finally exciting times to be a Battlefield 5 player. I mean, the gaming gods know this has been a long time coming. So much patience, so many bugs and setbacks suffered through. So many players have given up and left. But if you're still here or plan on returning, there will be content, there will be new experiences, and it looks as if there will be reasons to play. So many of my analysis and update videos on this game have been branded as negative. It's been utterly draining to cover this game honestly, hence one of the reasons why I don't do it so regularly anymore. Perhaps now the contrast can be seen. Without moments like this right now, there simply hasn't been enough positives to report on. The near constant news about Battlefield 5 has been bugs, things being removed, PR problems, and falling player numbers. Finally, we got some good news. And that's an important point that mustn't be ignored. I know many videos will be out there hyping all this stuff up, and for good reason. But I work purely within reality and logic. Will this be enough for the game to start to turn the tide, to fight back, to gain back some players, and begin to forge a better reputation within the wider gaming community? Well, that entirely remains to be seen. One thing is for certain though, it's better to have this coming than to not have it coming. We needed this. And yet it doesn't just wipe away that we're still struggling with a number of pretty significant issues. Issues that seem to be added to or altered with each patch. So in the interest of transparency and giving the full picture, I'll just quickly run through some of the issues the game has, so you can weigh them up against the good news, be aware of them, and consider if DICE can somehow get a hold on them whilst pumping out this new content. So there's the stuttering problem that's happening for a lot of players, seemingly more so on busy areas of the map, and predominantly on 64 player modes. Then there are many complaints about the significant return of TTD, lag, ping, and basic netcode issues that appear to be causing unreliable gunfights and many deaths around corners and behind cover. There's still the freezing that can occur when getting a kill in a tank. There's the background music now constantly playing sometimes. There are still micro freezes in Firestorm, still no loot boxes in Firestorm, many server performance notifications, lower FPS than players used to get, very unreliable footsteps, the wrong damage figures being shown, balancing still not working in matches, whether it be down to team skill or just basic team numbers, allowing for massively one-sided games. There's input lag and dropped inputs for things like reloads, switching equipment, and firing semi-automatic weapons, and honestly a whole lot more. It is somewhat surreal to have all of these issues this long after release. It's not really acceptable, and I hope we see much of this cleared up soon, which would be in contrast to what we've witnessed so far. Because the truth is, this game could be awesome without these problems. I genuinely think that, and I really think it could have been far more of a success than it's been. And I'm hoping this can be the case with all this new content coming. Even better that this content plan seems to show DICE are listening to the community and what it wants. Will this be enough? Well, that really does come down to the individual player's opinion, plus what DICE managed to do with all of the problems. But I am extremely pleased with what's set to come, especially considering they've hinted that there's more as well, and I'm sure many will feel similarly to me. We needed this. It's great news, and I really hope DICE do a great job on implementing it into the game. At least finally, there's a sense of optimism. So what do you think? Are you excited? Do you think this could be the start of a much brighter existence for Battlefield 5? And all sorts of related questions. Drop your answers in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, the best thing you can do is turn on notifications to stay up to date, as YouTube no longer guarantees to do that for you via subscribing. But I also would very much appreciate you liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and joining my Discord server in the description and my pinned comment. Here's the Board of Awesome for the epic people who support the channel on Patreon. They're all absolute heroes, and I love them all deeply and of course, often. If you want to join them on the Board of Awesome, the link to the Patreon page is in the description and my pinned comment. And with that all said, I'm GetGoodGuy, and I'll see you next time. Laters.